Dear ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are about to start. On behalf of Technology Center Prague and Slovak Center of Scientific and Technical Information, I'd like to wholeheartedly welcome you at the Czech-Slovak Information Day on MSCA Staff Exchanges. This event would not be possible without our partner, Palacký University Olomouc, whom we are very much thankful for these beautiful premises we are currently in. My name is Ludmila Tysiačná. I'm the Czech NCP for MSCA, and I will navigate you throughout today's event as a moderator. We have decided to throw this event this early before the opening date of this call, and the reason for that is that we wish to provide you with sufficient time to prepare your consortia, which is a time-consuming process. What is worth mentioning as well is that this event will have a follow-up in autumn. Together with my Slovak counterpart, Zuzana Reptová, we are planning a hands-on training for serious applicants to the 2023 call for proposals. It will be held at the end of this year in Bratislava. Having said that, I'm obliged to express sincere apologies from my colleague Zuzana, who is unfortunately unable to join us today. But she'll be very happy to host the event in autumn in Bratislava. I would also like to inform you that we have a representative of the Enterprise Europe Network here, Matej Smrek, who will be available throughout the breaks for any questions you might have about the cooperation with the business sphere and just the non-academic sector. So he'll be sitting over there, where you can see the counter. So he will be available for you. And as you can see, we will use Slido today. Of course, you will have the opportunity to raise your questions in person as well, but if you prefer this option, it is available to you. And with this, I'd like to welcome our first honorable speaker, who kindly agreed to provide an opening speech. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Lucie Plíhalová, Vice Rector for Science and Research at Palacký University Olomouc. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad that I was told to open this activity, this conference, related to Marie-Sklodowska reactions and especially staff exchanges national information. Very glad that this activity is supported at Palacký University, since these projects belong to Pillar 1 of excellent science that we would like to support very highly, and I guess that this is a step that goes towards better internationalization and forming effective consortia that can generate excellent scientific results. I would like to wish you good luck during creating and preparing of new projects, and I would like to express a great attitude that we can work and be a part of these great MSCA activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Plíhalová, for these encouraging words. We truly hope to see many more proposals submitted by Czech and Slovak applicants. And I will steal a few more minutes because I have a short presentation about the last call for proposals that we know results of. So just wait a minute. So I'd like to briefly present the results of the first Horizon Europe call for proposals so that you know what the statistics were for just your overview for having a background. So in 2020 first call for proposal, there were 202 eligible proposals submitted, and as you can see, 67 were supported, making the success rate over 33%, which is a truly high number for Horizon Europe, which might be a good incentive for you to try and submit a proposal to this scheme. The cutoff scores varied between almost 90 for the sociology panel and 72 for the life sciences panel. This can, of course, vary tremendously throughout the years, but this is what the results were for the first Horizon Europe call. As you can see, the majority of participants come from the academic sector, but around 1/5 comes from the non-academic sector, which is an essential part, as you know, or as you will find out soon, of these projects. I have highlighted how many proposals, how many participants, successful participants, won such a project from the Czech Republic and Slovakia. So as you can see, in 2021, there were 4 successful applicants from the Czech Republic and 5 from Slovakia. And this is another slide which is not related to solely the first Horizon Europe call, but this is a question we receive quite often. How large consortia should you have if you want to apply to this call? So based on the statistics, we can say that around 10 partners is a norm, but there are consortia with almost 40 partners as well. It is also a possibility, though it will be more difficult for you to handle. So around 10 is the optimum, I would say. With this, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to invite our representative of the European Commission, Thierry, Jacquin, who kindly agreed to come to the Czech Republic and introduce the upcoming 2023 call for proposals. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ludmila. Thank you very much to all of you for showing interest in the staff exchange program. Yes, I will be pleased to discuss and present to you this program. And of course, I hope you will be interested in it. Just coming back to the last slide that you showed, Ludmila, the norm indeed is about 10 proposals in average for the consortia that we see in the projects. However, this is scientifically driven, so it means that we don't care how many participants are there in the consortium. The question is who is needed to achieve the task and objectives of the project that you are submitting. So, of course, I will come to this in my presentation, but the minimum requirement is 3 participants, and it can be 30, 40 participants if needed for your project. So please don't consider this is not the correct answer, the correct question to ask. How many participants should you have in the project? The correct question is who is needed to achieve a good project. So yeah, so now you may ask yourself the question. Is this program, the staff exchange program, interesting for you? Then you should answer positively to 2 questions. First question is, do you want to produce high-level research and innovation? And I would say yes. And second question is, do you want to interact with other researchers and technicians some located somewhere else in this planet, meaning in other countries and where you are working in? And if the answer is yes as well, so this program, Staff Exchange Program, is made for you, and definitely you should apply for it. So, what I will present to you is the few objectives, the objectives of the Staff Exchange Program. I will present what is the added value expected from this program when you are implementing the research. I will talk about the budget, the proposal submissions, the evaluation criteria. I will give you some hints about the next call, even though Ludmila already presented it. And of course, I will give you a summary of the key features. I will compare, I will emphasize the differences between the new programs in Horizon Europe with the Staff Exchange Program and what was present before, what we had before was the so-called RISE program from the Horizon 2020 program. And I will give you some additional information and tips. So, So first of all, this program, what are the objectives for this program? This is a bottom-up approach. You can propose any subject that you are interested in. This is also a so-called international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary mobility for research and innovation staff. So basically, you have everything defined here. We are talking about staff clearly registered in your institution with a legal link with the institution. I will come back to this before. We are talking about staff who is knowledgeable in research innovation. So you should second people who are highly qualified, let's say, in research and innovation. We are talking about mobility. We provide support, financial support, to help you for the mobility of the researchers between institutions. So we only pay for the travel cost, housing, flight tickets, and so on. And then we are talking about the three aspects: international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary, the three I's. So international, because we are talking about European projects, so only 2 countries would be bilateral interactions. You need at least 3 different countries. I will come back to this in a minute, but international, not only within member states and associated countries of the European Union, but also in third countries like the United States or Japan, anywhere in this world. Except, I mean, there are few exceptions to these countries, but usually speaking, all countries are accepted. Intersectoral, we are talking about the academic sector versus the non-academic sector with SMEs. So we expect also to see some exchange between academia and non-academia. But I want to warn you that it all depends on the topic of your project. You could have only academic, for example, if the topic is only fundamental research, for example, and there is no yet application to your project. But of course, if there are ways to apply and do some innovation with your project, then yes, we expect that the non-academic sector would be involved. And we are talking also about interdisciplinary mobility. This is something new in a way that we bring with the Staff Exchange Program. Of course, interdisciplinarity was expected since long ago, but now we are talking about interdisciplinary secondments, and I will explain a little bit further about this. The third aspect is that we expect some transfer of knowledge between the participating organizations. Of course, if you go to some other places, you will learn what is going there about techniques, skills, procedures, whatever. So we expect that there is a transfer of knowledge. And the overall objective is to increase the attractiveness of Europe and competencies within Europe. Next, please. Oh, thank you. Great. What added value do we expect? So we expect added value at the level of the secondees themselves, and also at the level of the staff members, but also at the level of the organizations. Regarding staff members, we expect to have a transfer of skills and competencies. As I said, there is some training and some exchange of information. We expect also internal exposure to different countries, different procedures. Of course, this is redundant. I mean, you have some aspects that are redundant for staff members and for organizations. We expect to have an increase and better career perspectives for the staff. And we also rely on people and on their ideas that they will convert into products, processes, and services. So all this to the benefit of the European citizen. And we expect also that staff will participate to the networking and communication activities. And at the level of the organizations as well, we expect some transfer of knowledge. People are being exchanged, but we hope to see some skills and knowledge coming back to the sending institutions. As I said, we expect to see the three I's, international, interdisciplinarity, and intersectoral networks to be created and developed. And we expect to see an increase in the capacity of research and innovation in Europe. Yes. So what about the eligibility criteria now? The minimum requirements is 3 legal institutions participating to the project. At least 2 of them should be located in member states and associated countries. So we are talking about associated countries, just to remind you, it means these countries are not part of the European Union, but they participate to the scientific program and they, financially speaking, and therefore they are entitled and eligible to this program exactly the same way as any participant from member states. So what I was saying, a minimum of 2 participants in member states and associated countries, and then a third participant who also could be in member state and associated countries, but in that case, this third participant at least should be in a different sector from the 2 first ones. So, for example, 2 institutions in academia and a third institution in non-academia, all this within member states and associated countries. And another option for the third participant is to be abroad, to be located abroad in a third country, in a non-associated third country. For example, again, the United States or Japan. Talking about the secondments, what is eligible? So you can have an exchange between academic institutions, as I say, and non-academic institutions within member state and associated countries. You can also have an exchange from academia. From academia, for example, to from here. It's not easy to show. Yeah, from academia to third countries, for example, this is eligible as well. You can have also a secondment from non-academic institutions to academic institutions within member states and associated countries. And you can also have, of course, a secondment from these non-academic institutions towards third countries as well. And what about the third country institutions? You also can have a secondment from third countries towards the member states or associated countries, whether there are academic institutions or non-academic institutions, this is eligible, but I mean with some restrictions. So, of course, for the sake of the project, you can have secondments from the United States, for example, toward member states and associated countries, but these secondments are not funding, they are not financially supported. Unless in very exceptional cases you demonstrate that this should be supported by the European Union, but honestly speaking, this is very rare. But, however, secondments are eligible and financially supported by the European Union when people are coming from developing third countries. So, for example, from Argentina, Uruguay, wherever you can think of, it's still eligible. So, of course, I recommend you to check the list of these countries anytime you submit a proposal to make sure in which categories the participant and the country you're referring to would be considered like. So that was this. So what I presented here is exactly the same as it was before with the RISE program. What is new now with the staff exchange program is that you also can have so-called interdisciplinary secondments, meaning that before secondment within the same sector, for example, from academia to academia, within the same sector, it was not eligible before with RISE, it is now eligible with staff exchange. It is eligible, but with a certain limit to a maximum of 1/3 of secondments compared to the total number of secondments that you are asking for your project, and that will be achieved, of course. So either you can have secondments between academic institutions, as it is written here, or between non-academic institutions. And this you have to detail the secondments in your proposal. Another condition for these exchanges within the same sector in member state and associated countries. Another condition is that so first of, as I said, is maximum 1/3 of the total person months. The second condition is that at least there should be a different criteria descriptor of the laboratory you are working with in. For example, you work in a laboratory doing organic chemistry, for example, then you are allowed to go in member state and associated country, in other academic institution, to work on inorganic chemistry, for example. So you go from organic to non-organic institutions, then it will be eligible. You cannot go from organic to organic institution. And so you have a list of these criteria, of these descriptors. And of course, if you go from an institution doing mathematics to an institution doing biology, automatically that would be eligible. But if you remain in the same descriptors, that would not be eligible. So two conditions for this secondment. No. Thank you. So. Just to repeat what I just said, less than 1/3 of the total secondments that you will achieve, and we count what you've been implementing at the end of the project. And several aspects, several disciplines may be involved if you want to interact within the same sectors. This is what I said. And to clarify this, you have this list of descriptors that is accessible here. I don't know if I can click it. I don't know if you want me to show you, but you have this website that, yeah. So for example, chemistry, as I said, you have the first descriptor, C1, or inorganic chemistry. You can go to other institutions in different countries working on organic chemistry. And of course, you have to describe this in the proposal, and you have to convince the experts that indeed the topic with the subject you are working on is clearly an exchange between organic laboratory to inorganic laboratory, for example. And you could scroll down the list here and go to mathematics, environment, anything, and then of course that would be eligible. So the expert will have to confirm that indeed this is eligible, and this is interdisciplinary, and this is a decision of the expert to do this. So please convince them that this is correct. You're right. Next slide. Yeah. Thank you. So now, what about the staff who is eligible? So the definition is any type of staff involved in research and innovation activities. So research and innovation activities is very important. You should consider this very clearly. It means knowledgeable staff in research and innovation. People should know what they are doing with research, with the projects that you are offering. So it could be researchers. When we say managerial staff, yes, indeed, but I want to remind you immediately that management activities are not eligible during the secondments. So managerial staff means PIs, for example. So they know really how to organize the experiments and so on. And technical staff the same way. They should be highly qualified. Of course, this is a request in the proposals that you describe in the proposal, but also in case of audit, the qualification of the seconded staff will be checked. What about the duration of the staff to be seconded? It's a minimum of 1 month to be eligible. What is new with the staff exchange compared to the RISE program that we had before, what is new is that now the minimum can be spent in any hosting organization. Before, it had to be 1 month in exactly the same hosting organization. Now it could be 1 week in the United States, 2 weeks in Japan, and another 4th week in whatever in Slovakia, for example. The maximum duration is 12 months, no matter where you are going. Okay, so each person maximum can declare 12 months. This secondment can be split into several stays. I would say it's not in the interest of the sending institution to split, 3 days here and another 5 weeks here and so on, because you have to pay for the travel cost, and we pay only once. I mean, we pay just for the 1 month duration, no matter how many exchanges and travels you have done within this month. So, of course, you're only interested to reduce to the minimum the travel costs. What about the staff involved? The definition for the researcher is that the staff should hold a degree that allows to embark for PhD studies. So usually in Europe we consider the master diploma as being the diploma allowing to enroll for PhD studies. So this is a minimum requirement for researchers. There are a few exceptions, but as there are some exceptions, I would not go into details unless you want to some more details. This is to give you an idea. We all know what being a PhD means. This is still a training. We all know what the PI means, but to give a clear definition, this is this one. The people should hold the diplomas that allows to embark for PhD studies. People should devote full time of their full time to the project during the secondment. Even though this is a part-time, they have at home a part-time activity, for example, part-time employment contract, whatever. You should make sure that, legally speaking, according to national rules, the fellow can indeed work full-time during the secondment. So basically, you have two conditions for the staff to be eligible in terms of link with the sending institution. First, a minimum of 1 month's duration before the secondment under the same contract, and then the same contract should run during the secondment and allows you to work full-time during the secondment on the project. We expect that the people will come back to the sending institution after the secondment. The spirit, the idea behind that is that the secondee is bringing back some knowledge, the skills, technical aspects, whatever was related to the secondment. We expect that some knowledge is coming back to the sending institution. There is no specific minimum duration to come back. The idea, the spirit of it is at least the sending institution gains some feedback out of the secondment. Thank you. So what about the funding? The total per month at the moment is 4,600 euros. It is divided in two parts, what we call the researcher or staff category A cost, that for 2,300 euros. This is made to support the travel cost, basically, flight and so on. And the other part for 2,300 as well is dedicated to the research activities. It's called the institutional cost, or category B. And to give a reference, we suggest that 1,300 euros are going to support the research activities per se. You can buy anything, equipment, consumables, whatever. And 1,000 goes to the institutions for the indirect cost. This is totally flexible. The institutions can require more than 1,000, can take more than 1,000. Of course, we don't recommend this. We want to see the research being implemented as described in the project. So the more you take from this institutional cost for the indirect costs, the less you have left for the research activities. But you could spend 2,300 euros as well only for the research activities and consumables and so on. You can also use this money, this institutional cost, to support the travel cost of the fellow in case this is more expensive, higher than 2,300 euros. If you go to expensive countries, for example, this could be used, but again, it should not jeopardize the success of the project as well and the objectives of the project. The contrary is not possible, is not allowed. You cannot use part of this 2,300 euros that are normally dedicated to the travel cost. You cannot use them to support some research activities like consumables, equipment, laptops, or whatever. Of course, this 4,600 euros is provided as long as you achieve a full 1 month of secondment. I'm sorry. So What about the proposal submission? You have a link for fund. You go to the what we call fundings and tenders portal. You can select your call. There is a year, of course. You should read all documents very carefully. You have some links here. Of course, you can spread the presentation to anywhere. You can have some links here that are given for the MSCA keywords and interdisciplinaries. This is what I just presented you as a descriptors before. And we have also the list of associated countries. This is important because the status will change depending on the project. Whether you're going to an associated country or to a third country. I'm sorry. Next, please. So, as I said, please read carefully all documents that are provided. Of course, you have access to the description of the program itself, but read the model grant agreement, so you will know what to expect. You will please see what is expected, how to fill in the proposal, and you can check the frequently asked questions. You can, of course, refer to the guide for applicants, giving you some clues, some explanations on what to expect. And of course, I wish you a great success in your application. Make sure you address all points that are requested, that are described. In terms of submission, you have two parts. One part is called Part A, where basically you describe the administrative aspects of the institutions, telephone numbers, the name of people, and so addresses, and so on. Of course, the length of this Part A depends on the number of participants you have in your project. And the most important part is the Part B, which has a limited number of pages. It is limited to 30 pages, no matter the size of your project and no matter the size of the consortium participating to the project. And this will be evaluated by the experts. I'm sorry, again, next. Yeah. So there are three criteria basically that are considered for the evaluation of the proposal: excellence, implementation, and impact. Of course, all three of them are very important and equally important. Even though in excellence you describe your research, the quality of your research, state of the art of the results that is expected. What will be the impact for the staff, for the European community, and how you will implement this project. Next, please. Yeah. So the call just closed recently on 8th of March. So we are now running the evaluation per se, with inviting the experts and organizing the meeting, consensus meeting between experts to discuss about the quality of the project. The next call will be closed next year in February 24, opening in October. So you have plenty of time, as Ludmila said. You have enough time, plenty of time to check with who you want to collaborate and to build up the project. And next slide. To summarize the criteria, we have project of 4 years maximum. We reduce the number of person months that are allowed for the staff exchange compared to what it was before with RISE. Now the maximum person months for the project is 360 person months, so 1.5 million euros. As I said, between 1 and 12 months for the staff that are eligible. during secondment. And you have secondments that could be called interdisciplinary, but with two restrictions: maximum 1/3 of the total number of secondments that you will implement, and with different disciplines, different descriptors, as I said. The financing is 4,600 euros, split in two parts. One to cover the cost of the secondment, travel costs, so it's so-called category A, of 1,300 euros, of 2,300 euros, and another 2,300 euros for the institutional cost. The budget is around 75 million euros in total. To remind you, management activities are not eligible during the secondment. So if you plan on writing a new proposal, organizing new call, and so on, this is not eligible. If you have a specific work package called management, then no secondments can be allocated to this work package of management. Publication fees are reimbursable only if you publish in open journals. And we differentiate what we call beneficiaries who sign the grant agreement. So beneficiaries are located in member state and associated countries, and opposite versus what we call associated partners. And associated partners are not signing the grant agreement per se, but at the proposal submission, at the stage of proposal submission, at least they should demonstrate that they will invest in the project. And that's why we expect to see what we call a letter of commitment. They should submit a letter of commitment within the proposal, demonstrating that yes, they intend to participate to the project, because this is the only thing they will sign for the Commission. So we want to see some visibility, even though these institutions are not signing the grant agreement per se. These so-called associated partners are, by definition, in third countries, because they are not abide by the law of the European Union, so they are not signing the grant agreement. They could be located in third countries, as I said, but also they could be within member state and associated countries if they are not seconding people. So to avoid the burden of signatures and all this process, if they know that they will not second people, but just host people, for example, they just provide a letter of commitment and that's it. Next. So, as I said, I recommend you to read the guidelines and the program very carefully. You should find the guidelines for MSCA supervision in managing the program and the call. Next, please. You also are strongly invited to sign the MSCA Green Charter to minimize the footprint, environmental footprint of your project and activities. Next. In case of audit, it does happen. We try to combat against fraud. Fraud is a combination of intention to gain money illegally. We also consider the damage to the EU interest that has been made, and also we consider what is legal or illegal. So the fraud is a combination of three aspects. But I mean, of course, you can be convinced that whatever the intention of fraud is demonstrated or not, we don't really care, as long as we can see that there is some damage on the EU interest, or there is some illegal action that is implemented. Of course, you can report on fraud at any time if you have some suspicion, but this is what audits are made for, to double check that everything was done according to the rules of the Commission and to the law. Next, please. Yeah, good. So, what about the tips and tricks? Please closely follow the requirements of the call. As I said, address each part, each comma, each word that is describing the and giving you recommendations on how to submit the proposal. Follow the guidelines. You should highlight what will be the added value for the European Union and what will be the benefit for the European citizen. Get a second opinion from your colleagues from the NCPs. NCPs are very important because they know, of course, the rules, not only at national level, so they can help you locally. And they also know and informed about the EU rules, so they can have a good view and on the combination of both aspects. So please rely on the NCPs; they are here to help you. Please describe the benefit of the project, the impact of your project. This is very important, not only the quality of science and innovation, but also the impact. And please be clear how you will implement this, so that expert can clearly understand that many secondments would be used for whatever activities, this task 1 or 2 of the objective 1 or 2, and so on. And yes, as I just said, please contact the national contact point for any question. Next. So those are a few examples, but I think you will have during this morning session some examples of a local successful project. I will give you just one example here of a consortium. Of course, this is from the previous work program, RISE. MagnaMed working on nanostructures. This is an example with a Spanish organizer. Spanish coordinator, involving 7 organizations in Europe and 7 organizations in third country. You had Latin America and Central America here. You had intersectoral participation with 2 non-academic partners. And the budget was 846,000 euros. So there are several examples, but basically it's all the same idea, either only within member state and associated countries. But in that case, as I said, some intersectoral secondments are expected between academia and non-academia, for example. Next. Yes, okay, next. So I want to thank you very much now, and of course I'm happy for any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thierry, for your presentation. I propose that you stay here, and we will ask the audience if you have any questions. We have some questions in Slido, but if you have any right now, you can raise your hand. All right, I can see one.
Hello, my name is Patrik Zima. I'm from the Czech Academy of Sciences. Can you please go back to your slide called eligible exchanges?
Yes.
I'm interested in the top right rectangle. That's seconding from the academic institutions into third countries. My question is, those third countries, right there, top right. So those organizations in third countries are expected to be both non-academic or academic institutions.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, yes.
Right, so essentially it's okay to second someone from an academic institution to an academic institution,
yes,
in the third country.
Yes.
Even if it's not interdisciplinary.
Yes.
But it's not okay if it's within the EU, right?
It's okay now with
but
right
with restrictions.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So no matter. So just to wrap up, no matter what the sector is of the institution in the third country, academia or non-academia, it doesn't matter. You can go there, and
so
it's
from
eligible.
Organic to organic.
Yeah.
To use your example, it's
Yes.
fine if it's
Yes.
not within Europe. There are no restrictions.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And maybe just a very short second question. So the eligible staff is always researchers. It cannot be a technology transfer expert.
It can. Yes, it can be a technology transfer with technicians, but again, you need to demonstrate the qualifications of the technicians.
Okay, so a technology transfer specialist is a technician.
Yeah. Okay. Especially when you involve SMEs, for example, they may not have research laboratories per se in their premises, but of course they implement, they will apply the results of the research made in other institutions. But so these technicians are knowledgeable in producing the data, producing the results, so they can be transferred. They can be seconded, but again, the qualification of these people must be demonstrated. So people cleaning the dishes, it's very important in chemistry. It's very important in biology, but you can find these people in the hosting institution. So those people are not eligible for secondment.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much.
Ivana Herglová, Charles University. I have one question concerning the division of the minimum length of the stays of the secondment. If you say that the minimum length is one month, and if you can divide that, does it mean that you can really spend 1 week in one institution and then 3 weeks in another one?
Yes. For example, from here, Olomouc, you go to Bratislava for 1 week, and then you go for 1 week to Germany, and for another week to Sweden, and for another week to the United States. So 4 weeks total, 30 days minimum. Then it's eligible. Yes. No. It can be at any time during the length of the project. So 1 week your first year of the project, another week the second year, and the third week in October of the third year, whatever.
Philip Kraus, University of Palacký, Department of Asian Studies. I have one question about how to finance our activities in the third countries that are not considered as developing countries. For example, Japan, Taiwan, or South Korea. Of course, we know we can have the partners there, but they are unfortunately not eligible to have the budget within this staff exchange program. So, but nevertheless, we always have to organize there either research, some, let me say, activities. How we can do that exactly? It's more practical question, so if you can...
Okay, so in your question, I would like to distinguish two aspects. So first of all, South Korea is considered as a developed country, so no funding is allowed for them. One first example, yes, you can be seconded from Olomouc to South Korea. In that case, institution in Olomouc is entitled to receive 4,600 euros for 1 month secondment to South Korea. So you can use this money the way you want. This institutional cost, I said, you can use them before, during, or after the secondment at any time to prepare the research activities, or during the secondment to implement the research activities, or at the end to analyze some data, whatever. It can be spent either in Olomouc or in South Korea in the hosting laboratory. It's totally flexible, but this is a decision of the sending institution how to use this money. And I recommend you, of course, to clarify all those things in what we call the consortium agreement that everybody should sign. I mean, consortium agreement is what we call consortium agreement is between member state and associated countries. Partnership, what we call partnership agreement, involves as well third countries. But no matter, this agreement, you should describe clearly how you will split the money, how you will exchange the money. But what triggers the funding from the Commission is that the secondment is taking place from Olomouc to South Korea, to keep your example. Okay, but now the two second aspect of your question, just trying to clarify, if somebody from South Korea wants to come to Olomouc, then indeed it's not eligible for funding. Taking another example, somebody coming from Argentina to Olomouc, this secondment would be eligible for funding, meaning 1 month of staff. 1 month of the staff, or Argentinian staff coming from Argentina to Olomouc would be financially supported at the level of 4,600 euros. Okay, 1 month of staff coming from South Korea to Olomouc would not be supported at all. It's true that we accept some exceptional cases, but I have to tell you, these cases are very exceptional, and the experts have to confirm that they would agree. And at the proposal level, you clearly need to explain why it is necessary for you, and then, yes, in that case, European Union would accept to pay for this secondment from South Korea to Olomouc. But again, this is very rare. I hope I answered your question. Yes. Well, I mean, if you want more precision, what do you have in mind? I mean, if.
Of course, I understand that we cannot pay for the stock exchange from the South Korea, but the problem of this project is actually you cannot have you have the personal cost, but you cannot pay the salaries. So, for example.
I'm sorry, you cannot pay for what?
Salaries.
No.
So, for example, you are supposed to do the research in South Korea. So now I understand they have to have their own budget to apply for their even to do this. So, okay.
Well, they are developed countries. I mean, what is the spirit behind that? They are developed countries, rich countries. They don't want to participate to the European program. When, reasonably speaking, they should accept to participate. Even in Europe, Liechtenstein is very rich and is not willing to participate to the European program. Then what would be the reason to support them? So that from one side. On the other side, yes, there are countries, developing countries, what we call developing countries. It's not that easy for them to support science, and it's part of the spirit of the European Union to support these developing countries. And a way to support them is through the exchange of research activities. So there is good exchange between these countries and European Union, and it will benefit to all of them. Yes, we are paying for the secondments from these third countries towards Europe, for example, but we have some labor forces, I would say, in Europe. That is also good appreciated. And that's that's the spirit of this exchange. But to complement what I just said, third countries, non-associated third countries, are not signing the grant agreement, but they are entitled to receive some funding. So the way they receive the funding is through the hosting institution in Europe. Okay, so secondments between third countries, non-associated third countries from Argentina to Uruguay is not eligible. I mean, we don't pay for this. Automatically, this staff from non-associated third countries should come to member state and associated countries. Okay, so the hosting institution in member state and associated countries is following these financial procedures, making sure that the staff is eligible according to the rules, qualifications, and making sure that the secondment is eligible. And then in that case, they receive the money directly. Olomouc would receive the money for people coming from Argentina to Olomouc. Okay, and then that's internal cuisine between Olomouc institution and the institution in Argentina on how to pay for the staff being seconded, for the flight cost and so on. We expect that this will be done to the best benefit of the secondee, which means that we should avoid paying taxes, for example, if it is paid on the salary, on the bank account, personal bank account of the staff. If there are, depending on the countries, there are some rules where taxes should be paid. It's considered as a salary and taxes should be paid, while the institution should try to find other ways to transfer the money to the staff being seconded. By, for example, paying directly for the flight ticket, paying directly for the housing, and so on. Or eventually by topping up a little bit more than the category cost, so that the payment of the taxes would be covered by some additional amount. Yes, please.
I'm from the Palatsky University, and I have two questions. The first one would be, can a think tank be included as a non-academic partner? And the second question would be more specific. Let's say we involve some partners from Myanmar and we have them come here. It doesn't mean we necessarily have to go there, right?
So to answer your second question, no, you don't have to go to Myanmar if they come to you. Again, this is based on the on the project itself. I mean, the quality of the science that you expect to see. And now back to your first question, a think tank. I mean, the institutions has to be validated. What we call the participant peak number, what we call peak number. This has to be validated by our services, validation services, meaning that you need to provide the documents demonstrating the legal existence and that your institution is recognized at national level as existing, like it would be for any university or for any SME. So as long as your institution is validated, it will be validated in one sector or another as academic or non-academic. Academic means you are implementing research, or you are a high education institution. And all others are so-called non-academic institutions. So definitely, to participate to the project, you need to have this institution validated.
As we do not see any raised hands, I'd like to ask the questions we received in Slido. So the first one is, seconded staff may also be administrative, managerial, or technical staff supporting research and innovation activities under the action. Does this definition include a project manager who is not a researcher?
No. Well, the difficulty of the Commission is to be as large and open as possible. So that's why we provide these definitions of managing people, staff, okay? But what is the spirit behind that? Again, we want to see research and innovation being implementing during the secondment. To give you another idea, you should put the lab coat on when you enter the hosting institution. So management activities are not eligible per se. Okay, if you want to plan for submitting another proposal, discuss about building up a new project and so on, this is not eligible. during the secondment. So a project manager, I would be reluctant to say yes. No, a project manager per se is not eligible unless this is a PI. This is a highly knowledgeable researcher who is doing everything and know how to do the practice, how to do the techniques, but is also organizing the quality of science. So a technician, somebody who is not a researcher, somebody who does not have the status of researcher, a technician can be eligible for secondment. Of course, the technician should participate to the implementation of these projects that you described in the proposal. And this technician should be, let's say, highly qualified and knowledgeable in the project itself. So in any way, you need to demonstrate this. So of course, the higher diplomas that you can show with the technician, the better it is. But if you demonstrate that these people, this staff has been working for 20 years in the company, doing a great job, getting some training, official training that we can measure, that with diploma or some, if you say, well, yeah, this guy, he was working in the company for 20 years, he built up inside the company, but we have nothing to demonstrate this, you are taking a chance. I mean, you are taking a chance that it would be considered as eligible.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Good morning. I'm Milena Lojková, Legal and Financial NCP in Horizon Europe. Thank you for the explanation. I was just wondering whether you could give us some example of administrative staff who can be seconded, because for me, administrative staff is a project manager, for example, and you are saying this is not eligible, so maybe some example would be appreciated. Well,
I give this example as a PI. I mean, the PI, what we call PIs in research, those are managers of the science because they manage their staff in the team, they manage the staff in the laboratories, they manage the project, which project we should work on, and so on. They are called managers. But they are very knowledgeable in science. They do this complementary activity between management and research itself. So yes, those people are eligible. This is the spirit we have at the European Commission, trying to be as broad as possible, as open as possible. But they need to be knowledgeable in research and innovation. So if it's just a manager checking the Excel files with the phone numbers and say, okay, I have this guy, he was there for 2 months, but not understanding anything about the research that is implemented, no, this is not eligible.
For us, this is not clear from the text of the draft agreement, because it really says administrative, managerial, or technical staff, and we don't know what is behind because we don't have the annotations, so maybe this is just the feedback that this is not clear.
Yes, I accept the criticism. Yes, I accept this. Well, for the moment, that's how this program is built up. That's how the guide for applicants and the definitions are provided. I'm trying to give you the explanation and trying to be as clear as possible. So this is what we expect. Yes. Again, taking. If you come back to the practical aspects, at the level of the proposal, when you first submit your project, your proposal, you describe, you have a kind of short CV of the people that you will be seconded. If you are saying, well, I have the secretariat answering the phone, we would participate to the project, we don't care, this is not eligible. So at least at the level of the proposal, you should be clear about this, who will be seconded. And also in case of audit, as I said, we will check for the qualifications of the seconded people. And if, even if the people don't have qualifications, well, the secondment will be rejected, okay? So I hope it's clear. And of course, it should be people should be qualified for the purpose of the project. So even though a lawyer, for example, with a PhD in law is in theory perfectly eligible because the lawyer has a diploma in law to embark for PhD studies. Yes, he has a PhD, she has a PhD, but to do molecular biology, this is not relevant, right? In that case, the secondment would not be eligible, except, of course, if you demonstrate that for the purpose of the project in science, yes, we need a lawyer here on this project. Of course, that's eligible, but to give you some extreme cases, yeah.
Thank you. The next question is, the MSCA Staff Exchanges Grant does not cover the salary of the seconded staff. Can we finance the salary of the seconded staff from parallel externally funded projects, such as national or EU projects? On what conditions?
Yes, indeed, that's true, that Staff Exchange is not providing salaries. On the other hand, of course, in a way, we force you to provide a salary to the secondee. So, of course, we cannot forbid you from finding some other sources to support the salary of the secondee. If we will force you to have a salary, to bring a salary to the secondee, but we don't provide it, and we cannot prevent you from providing this salary. So if you bring this case to the court, of course, you would win very easily. So yes, you have to find ways to support the salary of the secondee, either at national level or local level within the institution. Yes, you have to. About other EU projects, I would be careful. I mean, there is no such a case where you could get the salary at the same time. So you should make sure that you are not tackling what we call double funding, even though double funding means that you claim the cost for exactly the same thing, the same topic. So this is not double funding, of course, is not eligible. That would mean that you take some money in your pocket. So the answer is yes, you must pay. You must support financially the secondee during the secondment in one way or another, according to the contract that you have, according to the link that the staff has with the sending institution. And this contract should run for a minimum of 1 month before the secondment, should cover the whole duration of the secondment, and eventually also should cover the return phase after the secondment.
All right, let's move on to the next question. The beneficiaries should continue paying seconded staff their normal remuneration according to their internal practices. Does RA control check the level of remuneration before, during, and after the project?
What we control is the existence of the contract itself, of the link with the institution, and the dates. I mean, the contract should cover the period of secondment, as I said, and at least a minimum of 1 month before the secondment. This is what we control. The amount of money is not controlled per se. Of course, there is a moral consideration behind that. We expect that the secondee will survive in the hosting country. So we expect that the sending institution provides sufficient support in terms of salary and everyday living for the secondee to be working full-time on the project during normal working hours. So per se, I don't think that we would consider the amount of money paid before, during, or after the secondment, but we expect that this is feasible and reasonable, and the fellow is living correctly.
The next question we have in Slido is, research, training and networking contribution should be used for the research, training and networking activities foreseen in Annex 1. Who and how checks it? It is unit cost. It should not be checked by the auditor.
So, talking about staff exchange, this research, so-called institutional costs, yes, should be spent for the sake of the project itself that you described in your proposal. That's what we expect. But in terms of invoices, for example, bills and all this, we don't check how much you have spent and for what you have spent the money. What is triggering the funding is that you can demonstrate that this fellow is eligible and that the secondment is eligible. This is what is triggering the money. But how you're using the money in terms of institutional cost, we don't check really. So you can buy anything you want. You can buy a laptop, equipment, a washing machine, whatever is needed for your project. You can invite people. You can pay for the renting rooms for workshops. Whatever you need to is fine. We don't check this per se. Of course, we expect that you will spend the money for the project, but that's all.
Another question is related to the holidays, annual paid leaves during secondments. Should the secondment be split in this case? Is it possible to do it more times during one secondment? Is it necessary to report it to the Commission in the portal in advance?
So, we have to be reasonable considering those cases. So, per se, holidays cannot be paid, so holiday periods cannot be claimed as secondments. As I said, we expect that the people would be working full-time during the secondment, right? So, of course, on Saturdays and Sundays or some specific days during the year that are non-working days, you declare the secondment as a one secondment without taking away these famous days and Saturdays and Sundays. You declare the full period of 2 months, for example. But of course, if you spend 2 weeks vacation in Brazil, going to the beach and not going to the laboratory, then this is not eligible. So you should stop the declaration, and for 2 weeks, whatever, and then eventually you come back to the laboratory and then you start again the declaration as a split stay. I'm sorry. So holidays are not eligible. Yes, you should stop the declaration, the researcher declarations that you indicate in the report.
According to the model grant agreement, the beneficiary must ensure that seconded staff is reintegrated after the secondment. What does this obligation mean in practice? How is it controlled?
So in practice, it means that the spirit behind that is we expect that some knowledge, some skills are going back to the sending institution. As I said in my presentation, we expect that the sending institution gets some improvement, some enlargement in their knowledge they have in-house. So this is what is expected. Of course, this can be done during the secondment per se. Some transfer of knowledge can be done already during the secondment itself. Practically speaking, if the institution decides to stop the link, the contract with the secondee immediately after the end of the secondment, that could be a problem. Of course, we need to have, it's a case-by-case decision. We need to know why the institution would stop the contract immediately after the end of the secondment. If this is a decision of the secondee, of course, we will not bring the secondee to jail. This is a decision. The institution can clearly demonstrate that it was a decision of the secondee to stop at the end of the secondment. Then it's okay. I mean, of course, again, we still hope that in some ways, even though there is no direct contract or link with the sending institutions anymore, we still hope that there will be some connections with the PIs in the sending institution, so the knowledge at least is back to the sending institution. But legally speaking, it could be 1 day return after the secondment, and we don't have minimum requirement for the duration of the return phase.
What is the typical duration of the secondment period, more or less than 6 months?
Well, I would say this is not the correct question. It's like, you know, how many participants should be in a consortium. Again, this is scientifically driven. If you need, minimum requirement is 1 month, as I said. So yes, a minimum of 1 month. It all depends on what you want to achieve in terms of task and objective for the science. So it could be 1 month, it could be 12 months maximum. So you may need three years, yes, but well, that's the rule of the Commission, maximum 1 month, and maximum 12 months. But you can have somebody else also being seconded for another 12 months, working on the same topic, working on the same subject. Eventually at the same time from a different institution or consecutively at different periods.
Does the Commission plan to have this scheme also in the 10th framework program? Any changes planned? For instance, eligibility of personal costs?
This I don't know. I have no information on this. Of course, I hope that it will continue. I have no information that it should stop in the future. Hopefully, yes, it will continue. But again, this is a final decision when the program itself is built and voted by the Parliament and Council.
We may have a question that we already heard an answer to. Yeah. Is secondment eligible also for project managers working on this MSCA Staff Exchanges project?
So no, management activities is not eligible.
Is it possible to have an organization in a consortium whose only role would be to work on dissemination and communication activities?
Yes, it is possible. We have cases like that, yes.
If partner organizations participate as associated partners and do not second any fellows, what role they can play? Can you name some examples?
Well, they can host people, obviously. I mean, they can still have at home in their premises. They can have some specific equipment that is very useful for the project. They have not that many people, let's say, for example, in SMEs, they may not have that many people available to work on the project, but they have people working at home and running the experiments at home. They can host people coming from abroad, participating to these activities, participating to these research activities, and then that's how they are very critical in the ways that they have the knowledge and skills and eventually the equipment to achieve the objectives of the project, but they are not seconding people.
Staff other than researchers, how the 3I rule is fulfilled? Are secondments of this staff in the same sector eligible? For instance, mobility between universities in EU?
I described the mobility, what we call interdisciplinary secondments. So yes, mobility between universities in EU is eligible as long as it is not more than 1/3 of the total person months that are allocated to the project. And as long as we have interdisciplinary secondment, meaning different descriptors from institution A to institution B. So yes, and this is a new aspect of this staff exchange program that was not allowed before with RISE. And then now, yes, we accept interdisciplinary secondment, meaning it's within member state and associated countries, within the same sector. So from academic to academic, the staff can be seconded if they are working in different activities. Like I gave the example of organic chemistry versus inorganic chemistry. But of course, if you go from chemistry to environmental laboratories, that's eligible as well. But again, you need to convince the experts that indeed this is the case and you have a true interdisciplinary secondment.
If our aim is to exchange experience in supporting early career researchers, can the staff of the Career Services or Grant Department participate in Marie Skłodowska-Curie staff exchanges?
No, as far as my understanding is that would be management activities, so the answer is no.
And the last question that we have in Slido is, could be organization working on this project only in terms of management, coordinator of this project?
In a way, yes, but with no secondment from this institution. That's all I can say. I mean, you have large institutions with so-called European offices where they manage the project. Why not doing something like that rather than, I would say, paying a specific institution to do this?
Thank you very much, Thierry. Do we have any more questions here in the audience? If not, then we will have a break. Because we finished a bit later than expected, we will postpone the next session, so we will start at 11:45. And enjoy the refreshment.
Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, let me start with a sincere apology for not being able to join you today in person. My name is Zuzana Reptová, and I work as the contact person for MSCA in Slovakia. In this short presentation, I would like to share some insights on what we can actually learn from last year's evaluation of staff exchanges proposals. These insights come from an extensive analysis of evaluation summary reports, which we conducted together with a few of my NCP colleagues across Europe. We looked at the evaluations of projects from all thematic panels, all countries, and our focus was on those that either scored really well or at least reached the threshold value of 70% and above. We looked at individual evaluations and manually coded them in order to really just help us understand what reviewers commented the most about, what they hinted on, both in terms of strengths and weaknesses. In the next 15 minutes, let me walk you very briefly through some of the aspects that raised the attention of the evaluators the most, and perhaps highlight some of the most repetitive comments. This presentation is, in fact, just a small appetizer. If you're interested to know more, you're more than cordially invited to our hands-on training on how to write MSc staff exchanges proposals. This is something that we will organize in the last quarter of this year. Before we dive into detail, let me briefly recap the proposal structure. As you may already know, the proposal consists of 3 parts. The part A, administrative forms that are to be filled online in the Funding and Tender Opportunities portal. part B1, which is the actual proposal, consisting of maximum 32 pages, and the three main parts of focusing on excellence, impact, and implementation respectively. And then part B2, which is more of an illustration or complementary part to the actual project proposal. Part B2 gives us details about the participating organizations, including 1 page per each beneficiary and half a page per associated partners and non-academic beneficiaries. Then also mandatory declarations, such as the declaration on interrelationship between participating beneficiaries and a letter of commitment that is compulsory for all associated partners. What is really interesting for us in light of today's presentation is this part B1. B1 actually in its composition mirrors the evaluation criteria which you're currently looking at. The criteria of excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation. In the evaluation, each of these is scored individually, and the project needs to pass the threshold in each of the three main criteria. The final evaluation score of the project is then weighted on a scale where excellence accounts for 50% of the overall score, impact for 30%, and the aspects related to implementation constitute 20% of the overall final score of the project. The overview that we are looking at contains 9 sub-criteria, if I may call them that way. Under excellence, these focus mainly on the objectives, methodology, and the interaction between participating organizations. Under impact, or the second column, there are 4 criteria looking at the degree to which the proposal has potential to develop lasting research collaborations, transfer of knowledge, and its contribution to improving the R&D potential in Europe and at global level. Then the second criteria focusing on skills and career enhancement for the participating personnel. Third sub-criteria under impact being the maximizing of outcomes and impacts of the project, including the plans for communication, dissemination, and exploitation activities. And the last but not least under impact are the expected scientific, societal, and economic impacts of the proposed action. The last part, implementation, consists of 2 sub-criteria only, first being the work plan and the appropriateness of the efforts assigned to the work packages, as well as the risks assessment. The second and last being the capacity and role of each participant in the project, the hosting arrangements, and the complementarity of consortium as a whole. So knowing these 3 criteria and 9 sub-criteria, we might be interested to know where evaluators' attention tends to focus more and where it goes less than we would perhaps expect. Here we see a raw overview of frequencies with which reviewers commented on each of these evaluation sub-criteria. Where the most attention seems to go were actually methodology as part of the excellence section and the part about work plan and assessment of risks, which are an intrinsic part of implementation. These were followed by comments, both positive and negative, on participants' roles, capacities, and hosting arrangements, as well as intense commenting on the research and innovation objectives of the proposed projects. On the contrary, the criteria that sparked the least reviewer attention was the one on enhancement of skills and career perspectives of the participating staff. Let us look a little bit more closely at those most commented ones, or at least some of them. The methodology, being the most commented aspect of MSCA staff exchanges projects last year, is where the reviewers are looking at the soundness of the proposed methodology and whether it seems suitable and sufficient to achieve the research and innovation objectives. In all MSCA projects, assessment of methodology also pays attention to a range of what we could call horizontal issues in methodology, such as the use of international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral approaches, or to consideration of the gender dimension and possibly other diversity aspects, and then to the quality of the proposed open science practices, including data management. The ESR's analysis shows that prime attention went into rather general comments on methodology, on its feasibility, on its potential to achieve the stated objectives, on the clarity with which it was laid out, its internal consistency, etc. When it comes to the horizontal aspects of methodology, evaluators tend to focus a lot on its interdisciplinarity aspects. This seems to really attract a lot of attention. Two other aspects also highly captivating the attention during evaluation were the open science practices and the plans for management of research data, including the data treatment in line with the FAIR principles and the research data management plan. What we also can see here is that not really much attention went into international aspects, neither to intersectoral aspects or other diversity aspects. These were the least commented areas that reviewers did not really tend to pick up on too much. Here are just a few examples to illustrate what seems to be the most typical comments from the evaluation in terms of strengths in green, as well as in terms of weaknesses which are red flagged. I'll just give you a few seconds to read through these at your own pace. And here we see an overview of the excellence part in general, with its three sub-criteria divided into different elements and sub-elements. And we can see the extent to which reviewers were commenting or not on each of them. I'm not going to go into details, but if you're interested, certainly do reach out after this session or come to the next training. Where I would like to stop and talk a little bit about again is another criteria that attracted the most comments from evaluators. That is quality and effectiveness of the work plan, including the assessment of risks and the appropriateness of the efforts assigned to individual work packages. Here is a look at the relative weight of these, showing that apart from general comments on the work plan and the efforts assigned to it, evaluators' attention was also highly devoted to the risks assessment and perhaps surprisingly to a secondment plan. The secondment plan details measures of secondment implementation within the project, how these secondments are necessary to achieve the stated R&E objectives, how they fit with the tasks, the contributions to milestones and deliverables, etc. Again, we see that not that much attention was devoted to projects, timelines, schedules, milestones, or to the management structure. These were the areas that tended to attract relatively little reviewer attention, both in positive and negative terms. Here are a few typical examples to illustrate the most common reviewer comments. While I let you read at your own pace, let me in the meanwhile draw your attention to the need for being as detailed and as specific as possible, especially when it comes to partners' contributions to work packages, to avoiding disproportionalities between their contributions and the person months claimed by each partner, being specific about the purpose and the necessity of the proposed secondments in light of the project's objectives, and also being as specific as possible about your mitigation measures, about the contingency plans that are related to the research risks as well as to the project management risks that may be inherent to your project. And again, we could zoom out and look at the whole criteria of implementation. In the right side of this circle, we see what we just talked about. The left half of the diagram points to the other sub-criteria under implementation, that is relating to participating organizations, their roles and capacities, hosting arrangements, and the consortium as such. Here we see that this part attracted in general less attention in the evaluation than the one we just talked about, and primarily comments here focused on participants' complementarity and on the infrastructures. What is interesting to me is also to see that some aspects received almost no attention by evaluators, such as the role of non-academic partner or the institutional collaboration. Now zooming out of the ESR analysis back to the proposal structure, a few words of advice that are general, but it never hurts to be reminded. Be sure to use the correct official template for the call. Keep it to a legible font, with the minimum font size being 11 as per all Horizon Europe calls. The font can be smaller for literature references, which are to be listed in footnotes with a font size of 8. And also it can be smaller for charts and tables where the font can be decreased down to 9 points. Keep single line spacing with margins of 15 millimeters on all sides. Keep the header and the footer properly filled in the project proposal and name the document in a way that makes it easy to attribute. And a few words of advice on the general layout of your B1. Layout as such is not evaluated, but it certainly makes life easier for the evaluators if the document is easy to navigate. What we generally recommend to do based on past practice is to use visual aids to separate the blocks of text, be it charts, diagrams, tables, text boxes, figures, as long as they help you advance your argument and they really contribute to what you have to say in the proposal. If you're using these, ensure any colors that you use are also understandable when printed in black and white, so that these diagrams make sense also in grayscale. Use highlighting where appropriate, be it bold, underlining, italics, but just don't overdo it because that can also make it pretty difficult to navigate. As per use of language, explain any abbreviations, use simple and clear text, avoid long sentences, avoid jargon, make sure that your text is accessible also to readers who aren't necessarily specified in the subfield that you are submitting your proposal in. Get rid of repetitions, anything that you've already stated in another part of the proposal. You can refer back to it if necessary. That would be the few words from my side. That's it for today from my side. Let me once again cordially invite you to a practical training on Staff Exchanges proposal writing. This training will be organized for Slovak and Czech applicants in Bratislava in the last quarter of the year, in late November or early December. The date is still to be decided. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me after the event.
Ladies and gentlemen, so we are back from the lunch break, and I'd like to welcome here our 3 speakers. 2 of them are present here in the room and 1 is online. So we have 2 coordinators of Slovak and Czech projects of this type that we are discussing today. I'd like to welcome Ms. Anetta Čaplánová, who coordinates a project called ODDEA. She's from the University of Economics in Bratislava. And I'd also like to welcome Mr. Pavel Kerchev, coordinator of the CropPrime project from the Mendel University in Brno. And online we have Ms. Viera Skákalová, who is project partner from the non-academic sector in project CompSaveNano from Danubia NanoTech company. So, I'd like to pass the floor to Ms. Čaplánová, and I will share her presentation, and we will read success stories of these 3 projects. I will share it also in the Zoom so that our speaker from Slovakia, Ms. Skákalová, can see it.
And can I, if I could have that one, I'll just write.
And I will share just a second.
Maybe we should start the presentation. Yeah, okay. Now it works, okay. So good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here because as I was introduced, I'm here to represent a success story. So it means that it's not only about preparing the proposals, but there is a chance that they actually will be funded. So I'm from the University of Economics in Bratislava, and we are coordinators for the project which has a full name, Overcoming Digital Divide in Europe and Southeast Asia. The acronym is ODDEA. And actually, this is the interdisciplinary project which is based in social sciences and then partially also technical sciences. So we just started on the 1st of December 2022, so we got the grant last year. And the project is going to last for 4 years, so I can even share some first experiences from the implementation of the project. But in the first place, I would like to tell you a few words about the project, and then I will share some insights, some ideas, which I think might be useful for you when preparing the project. The experience from our preparation of the project. So, as you know, this program is focused on collaboration between or across the partnership and on the staff exchange of experienced researchers and early stage researchers. So early stage researchers being referred to mainly as doctoral students. So in our project we have two geographical regions which are covered. This is Europe and European Union countries and Montenegro, who are full partners of the project, and then we have associated partners from Southeast Asian region, namely from Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So here the mobility is the key component of the project, and actually it is at the core of the research which is to be carried out during those 4 years. Actually, we have launched already the website of the project. It's early on in the project implementation, but you can check it if you feel like, and then you can follow up with us if you are interested in. We would definitely be happy about it. Then it doesn't work. Yeah. So here you can see the partners. In Europe, we have 2 universities from Krakow, Poland, one from Hungary, in Ger, and then we have 2 Montenegrin institutions. One of them is the university, and the second one is the research institute, which is a private research institute. And in Southeast Asia, we have 3 partners. These are one of the top universities in those countries, and I think they are very well developed research-wise. So it is, I think, quite a strong consortium. However, you can see that we don't have any partners from what we would call old EU member states, so it's focused predominantly on Central and Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. And I think it makes sense because as for digital divide, those countries which are in the consortium do not perform very well in terms of digitalization, so we can learn from each other, and we can carry out research which would actually be relevant and could provide the answers how to trigger, how to improve digital performance in all those countries. What makes the project innovative? Because at some point, if you look at the proposal and the application and its structure, you see that excellence, innovativeness, European added value, these are all aspects which need to be addressed. So we realized when we looked at the literature that in terms of the state of digitalization in Southeast Asia, there has not been much work, research or otherwise work done to be able to compare the performance of those countries and to actually understand what is going on there. Of course, in Europe it's different. We have the DESI index, and that is quite a good source to compare different aspects of digitalization and lack of digitalization in different countries. But for instance, even in Montenegro, they still do not compile, or we don't have the DESI index for that country, so that is also something which we look at and aim to contribute to. So our goal is to make a comparable index of digital economy and society for Southeast Asian countries, and to contribute to understanding the degree of digitalization in Montenegro as well. The set of countries themselves is unique for this kind of research consortium, so I think that's also innovative, and then this creates the opportunity to establish and deepen research cooperation across the consortium and researchers in the consortium. So here I just would like to point out to project objectives as we specified them in the proposal. Some of them I already mentioned when I mentioned the innovativeness of the project, and of course we do not focus on research only, but we also focus on quality assurance, we focus on dissemination and communication, and then finally sustainability. So the point is here, when you prepare the proposal, to actually pursue the evaluators that the work which you plan to do could not be done in the same way if each institution would carry out the work on their country or in a narrower scope themselves. So there must be the synergy which would guarantee contribution to the state of the art and then also to the quality of the research results and policy relevance of the research which is being undertaken. So here we have work packages which we work at. As you can see, there are 4 work packages which are research focused, and they kind of build upon each other. So we started already with work package number 1, and then they built upon this work package, which is actually the literature review and the state-of-the-art review. And next to it, then we have work package 5, which is dissemination and communication, and work package 6, which is project management. So that was briefly about how our proposal is structured, and now I would probably spend some time on what are the key aspects of preparing a successful project proposal, because since you are here, I think this is the question which interests you most. I don't think what I will be going through is totally new to you. I just wanted to provide a summary because obviously some of those aspects are really self-evident, but sometimes we forget about them. So you should start preparing the project as early as possible. I looked at the website of the European Commission, of the Research Executive Agency, and of this program. And actually the new call will be open early in October this year. So now there is this event which introduces or reintroduces the program to you, and I think this is a very good opportunity also to network and to start to think about preparing the proposal, because sometimes, and that concerns myself as well, we just wait until there is the official call, and then we take time organizing the consortium, etc., and then at the end we run of time, and then it can affect the quality of the proposal. Then it is important to study the documents which are published. It is demanding because frequently it is quite extensive, but it's well worth the investment. Of course, the quality and balanced nature of the consortium is important. Then first we should see and think about what the goals of our research are to be, and then finally, of course, we need to settle down and to start writing the proposal. And when writing the proposal, I would like to emphasize a few points. We as researchers, in many cases, we focus on the content, on the quality of our research. Of course, that is very important, but on the other hand, we should pay attention also to the form, because also the form communicates important information about how committed we are to the proposal and to its preparation. It communicates how much time we spend on it, and I think that is equally important aspect as well. When looking at the structure of the proposal, sometimes we might omit some of the sub-criteria, or we might not realize all the aspects which are mentioned in that sub-criteria. And then, if you put yourselves into the shoes of the evaluator, they would be looking for exactly all those aspects in your description. And if they are missing, then the score would be affected or could be affected, and that could play a negative role in terms of the chance of your proposal to be founded. So it's important to spend time on each sub-criterion and develop it to the full extent possible. Then we should be realistic, and we should not promise something which is not feasible to accomplish. We should understand the scope of the funding available and the format of the funding as well, and adjust the proposal to it. And last point I have here is we should try to make the proposal excellent in any respect, because it's very competitive, and only really excellent proposals can be funded. To be honest, we got this grant, but it was not our first proposal we submitted for that call. We actually got it when we kind of reapplied for the third time. Yeah. Even though we changed the proposal substantially, and we changed the focus, but we were on this application for three subsequent calls. So it's perhaps also important to say, don't be discouraged, it's possible. Yeah, you spent a lot of time on preparing the proposal, and then don't forget about it once you don't succeed on the first try. And I'm probably running out of time, so I will actually just run through the other slides which I have here. Those three criteria were already discussed here. So from the point of view of an applicant, of course, excellence is linked to and relates to the content of the research, which is to be carried out, but even here we need to understand the framework, and we need to understand that the scheme is quite specific. The whole budget is triggered based on the secondment mobilities, and even the description of the research part needs to be formulated so as to achieve the goals, the research goals which we formulate alongside the specific call and specific program. We may move on. Then the second one is impact. Maybe the most important message I would have here is that that part should not be taken as a mandatory right, because obviously you have those three criteria in virtually all European calls for proposals, and we tend to be lazy or perhaps run of time and not have enough time to spend on impact for each proposal we would be developing. But I think it's very easy to recognize if the applicants spend time on preparing impact and focusing on generating the impact and sustainability and also exploitation specifically linked to the research proposed, or if it was done just copy-paste from other projects, thinking in terms of dissemination through social media, standard channels, etc. So I think here we can gain plus points, or we can lose, and that can be decisive, and that can decide whether we get funded or not. So impact is important, and it should be adapted to the proposal in question, which we have been developing for any particular call. And then as for implementation, there are also other aspects which I actually put into the brackets, which I found very relevant and important for us. But you will have my presentation available, so due to the lack of time, I would not discuss it in detail. But maybe one point I would like to stress is think about implementation part, not from the point of view of developing the proposal per se, but think about it from the point of view that once the grant is granted to you, once you are successful, then you will need to follow the implementation plan, and you will need to stick to it, because these days we need to include the description of the proposal to the grant agreement and then stick to it. So it's not only to impress the evaluators to get high scoring on it, but really try to make it realistic, because once you succeed, then you will be requested to stick to it, and if you put in something which is not feasible, then it can backfire. And finally, the budget, again, this call has a very specific budget, which is based on second-man mobilities. So it is important to understand it, to balance the work required with specific planning of second-man mobilities, and not only in terms of numbers, in terms of institutions sending and receiving, but also in terms of work to be done, meaning the complementarity between early stage researchers and experienced researchers. That's it, I think. This should be the last one. And if you have any questions or you would like to reach out to me, here is my email address, and I will be glad to hear from you and to share my experience, not only in terms of preparation of the proposal, but perhaps later on in terms of the implementation of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will stop sharing this presentation and I will open the other one, which is Mr. Kerchev's presentation.
Thank you. So thanks a lot for the invitation. And it's quite nice to be here to share some experience and to learn from others as well. I was quite surprised this morning to hear that this project was the only one funded in Czech Republic for last year. And you can see this as a success story, but I actually think that it's just a play of numbers, because success rate is quite high, as we heard, like 30%. So this means that either not so many projects were submitted or simply this was good enough. But like I think not so many projects were submitted, and I think that today, this information day will be a boost for you to apply in the future and to try to get this funding. And I think when it comes to success rate, the main reason is that these are challenging projects to implement in reality, because it involves a lot of human factor. So there are a lot of people involved, institutions traveling, and it's difficult to put in place. Not so many people want to be committed to send their staff away for extended periods of time, etc. So it sounds amazing, high success rate, but in reality it's also a difficult project to implement, difficult scheme to work on. So specifically the project itself we're dealing with, it started in January this year. So the name is Stabilizing Crop Yield Under Favorable Conditions by Molecular Priming, and we call it CropPrime. It's in the field of biotechnology, plant biology, agriculture. And basically to be running till 2026, and the budget is a bit shy of 1 million euros. So can we? Okay. So like, can you move this bar somehow a bit like from this? Doesn't matter, like the bar on the screen, but like here's a map of the partners. So Mendel University in Brno is the coordinator of the project. So we have partners in Europe, and among them are institutions in Bulgaria. Then we have another institution in Czech Republic, the Czech Academy of Sciences in České Budějovice. Then we have institution in Belgium. Then our industrial partner is based in Ireland. And then when we actually applied, UK was still part of the scheme as a paid member state, but now they're out. So like we still kept the UK partner, but they're not receiving funding directly from the EU, but they managed to secure funding from their national agencies. So apart from the European partners, we have a partner in Argentina and in South Africa. So all together we kind of have this consortium, and we're trying to solve a problem which is related to agriculture. And just like a very brief introduction what we're trying to do. So basically, we're trying to look for solutions to increase plant resistance to stress responses by treating them with certain chemicals. And then this is a concept called molecular priming. So basically, when you treat a plant with a chemical and there is a stress after a few days, the plants that are treated will survive better. So it could be drought, it can be cold spell, or anything related to abiotic stress, or even biotic stresses like pathogens, etc. So we So basically what we aim to do is define novel ways to treat plants, and we are focusing on natural products. So, for example, our participation of Mendel University in Brno, what we have to offer to this consortium is a collection of rare species from Phytophthora. These are some kind of plant pathogens, and we want to extract some molecules from them and test them how they kind of influence plant performance under stress conditions. So our industrial partner, they have a long-lasting expertise in using seaweed in priming plants against stress resistance, stress responses. And we have some natural extracts from rosemary, which is the dango of our partners in Argentina. Altogether, what we try to do is bring different natural compounds that can be explored together in a synergistic way to improve plant performance under stress responses. So that's like a scheme which describes the work packages, but like maybe I'm not going to go in details. So just like a very high helicopter view. So what we have is, on one hand, some existing products from the company we are working with based on seaweed. And then we have some novel discovery work packages where we would like to extract and analyze plant products and Phytophthora extracts. And basically, at one hand, we want to identify how the products of the companies are working, and on the other hand, enhance their action by mixing them or kind of preparing new formulations using these novel bioproducts. And for that, we are going to use different levels of expertise available throughout the consortium. So we have proteomics facilities, transcriptomics methodologies, like high throughput phenotyping facilities in different countries, and other different specific like techniques that I'm not going to talk about, but everything should come together, and we hope to work in a kind of synergistic manner and use the information from each partner to improve the performance of our products. So like this is the project in numbers. We have 230 person months, and they are distributed between approximately 36 plant secondments. And within these 230 person months, we have these so-called interdisciplinary secondments, which we are mainly using to send people within Europe, from academic partner to academic partner, which is actually quite beneficial in this scheme, because previously it was not possible, and now it allows like to share certain expertise which is lacking in some of the partners, even though they're in the same academic sphere. So like we include a lot of training opportunities, and basically they reflect the expertise of the individual partners. And it's kind of very technical here, but like we try to put together like each of the partners to give some kind of either workshop or seminar or some kind of training in different specialized field of expertise. And some of them are very technical, others are a bit more like soft skill related. For example, let's say entrepreneurship, transferable skills, technology transfer, etc. So like we try to kind of couple each of the partners with some specific know-how, expertise that can be beneficial for the rest of the consortium. Mm-hmm. And then this is the last slide, obviously acknowledgements of the funding agency. And I'll be happy to share any further information and answer any questions.
I'd like to ask Ms. Skákalová, hopefully we can get in touch. Yes?
So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can hear you. Can you please share your presentation?
Oh, yes.
Or do you want me to share it?
I try. If it will not go, maybe you can help me with the
All right.
one which I sent.
It looks promising. So we can see you and we can see your presentation as well. So please,
Okay,
the floor is yours. On the view tab, the third one. It doesn't matter, you can even proceed like this. Or I'd like to know.
Okay, I wanted another version, but it's okay. This will be a bit simpler. So, my name is Viera Skákalová, and I will just shortly present the story of our small company, Danubia NanoTech, which is based in Bratislava in Slovakia. In contrast...
Recording in progress.
I'm sorry.
In contrast with the colleagues before, we had a much easier situation because we are the smallest partner who did not contribute much to the preparation of the project, but we were fortunately wanted for our products. This company is producing nanoparticles, which are the main worry of the project itself. So the proposal had a name, basically the acronym was CompSaveNano, and this is I think the main way how to one needs to take care of a rating proposal is to very carefully read all objectives of the call. This call was on Stock Exchange, and then follow very carefully all keywords and satisfied all of them. If one feels this is the scope which is perfect for the goal of the research, then it's very nice to go in it, find partners, and try to follow the most excellent way of satisfying all requirements. So in this proposal, this is a description of the project, and basically in the first 3 sentences, this is very clear who will be the partners. The first sentence would write nanomaterials are increasingly used in several commercial applications thanks to their unique properties. Then the second sentence says, however, any potential health and environment risk linked to these properties will need to be carefully assessed. And the third sentence says, nanomaterial risk assessment requires advance in silico methodologies, meaning the partners would be those who prepare nanomaterials, those who will study the toxicity of these nanomaterials, and the third partners need to be experts in IT technologies who will theoretically model the relation between the properties of nanoparticles and their toxicity to people and environment in general. So this is a modeling platform which is based on experimental results. So we started already long ago. This is the long list of the partners. There is 22 partners, 16 are from European countries and 6 are third countries. The distribution around the world is like that. The blue colors represent universities and public institutions. The brick color are private companies, and the green colors are the third countries which contribute very nicely to the expertise. This is more precisely detailed how private companies, public institutions, and the third countries would share the exchange. The rule is the public companies and private companies have to make visits, not among the same sector. Then this I show the rules, how basically what is the goal and the role of the host institution, and what is the details of training which should be in this type of call satisfied in order to have some sense for the people who do secondments and the host institutions. And as we started in 2020, 3 months later, there was all activity stopped, and the interruptions were for 2 years. So basically, we started back last year, and we asked for prolongation, which was obvious, it had logic, and it was satisfied. So in a real situation, we started working only last year. I will just very shortly explain what we do and why we are very happy to be in consortium. Our company is producing graphene. It is more or less already a bit known also among public. So this is a very, very simple structure made of one type of atom of carbon, and it is very closely related to what you have in pencils, meaning graphite. So our company developed a method which can produce different types of graphene products, but the most used is oxidation of graphite, which would lead to single layers as nanoparticles for many, many applications. What we can change is, for instance, lateral size from single micrometers to hundreds of micrometers. So this would be one aspect of care, whether what is toxic, whether it has any effect on toxicity. The second aspect which we tested is crystallinity. Here you see a very, very detailed picture where every spot is one atom. And you see very disordered structure on the left side and relatively nicely ordered on the right side. So these were the samples which we contributed to the project. And we visited already 2 research institutions. We reserved some tests, and to my very big surprise, the samples I considered as most safe at the moment do not look like. so safe. So our need is to understand what is going on. We need to clearly understand the reasons in order to move the results to the modeling level, so that this can be then generally used for any need for people who are producing particles, and based on the research can somehow design the shape and properties. So more or less, this is what I wanted to say, and one needs to understand the requirements of European Commission, understand what is the goal of European Commission in order to write a proposal, but there is absolutely no secure, clear answer whether you will be supported or not. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Skákalová, for this presentation of your motivation and the project overall. I'd like to pass the floor to you. Do you have any questions? We do have some questions in Slido, but if you wish, you can raise your hand. If it's not the case, then I'd like to ask Ms. Skákalová to stop sharing her presentation, and instead I will share Slido. So I will just start reading what the audience is interested in. Do you find MSCA RISE or staff exchanges projects easy to administer? Have you encountered some issues in this context? So whoever wants to start.
Maybe I will start, even though we do not have that much experience from the implementation as yet. I think the one problem which we encountered, it's actually solvable. It's not such a problem, but it's more like a complication, because we have full partners who are EU institutions, and then we have associated partners which are institutions from Southeast Asia. And then associated partners have specific treatment in terms of reporting and in terms of the possibility to disburse funds to them. So we had to solve the problem in terms of planning the secondments and the financial flows linked to that. Because actually we as coordinators cannot actually send money directly to associated partners. So the way we addressed that was that now we actually send funds for the secondments from associated partners to individual European institutions, to the respective institutions, and they are responsible for the reporting of and disbursement of those grants, alongside also with the recording of the secondment mobilities in the online tool, where they are supposed to be recorded within 14 days until they since they started. So that was one aspect, and the other aspect perhaps is the understanding that we need to pay out the part A to seconded researchers, but at the same time we need to think about whether actually we are or they are able to cover related costs to their secondment mobilities from that allocation. And in our particular case, this is not in some cases the case, because we have the mobilities between Southeast Asia and Europe and vice versa. And recently, I think the prices of flight tickets went up substantially. So especially in terms of mobilities, which are for 1 month only, we found out that is virtually impossible to cover actual costs linked to the second-man mobility from Part A. And of course, then we need to think about how to solve this problem. And yes, an alternative is to use part of Part B to add to Part A, or to have the universities to co-finance. So for the time being, I think these are two aspects which we found a bit tricky, and we needed to think about how to address it, or address them in the best way, which would suit all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kerchev, would you like to share your experience?
I would rather say my experience is rather limited, because we started in January, but from what I have learned so far, things are not easy. These are difficult projects to manage, and especially if you don't have dedicated staff to manage the administrative part, it can be quite overwhelming. And the thing is, there are many people involved, and whenever there is someone with a specific problem, we have to find a solution, and then the problems can be different in different partners. So at every step you might find some difficulties, and in general it's just not easy. Yeah, so this is not an easy project to manage, so to speak.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Skákalová, would you like to add anything, because your project has been ongoing for the longest time, so maybe you have some important messages to share? We cannot hear you, so probably not. In that case, we will move on.
Sorry, I was somehow did not get the question. Could you repeat?
So, have you encountered any issues during the administration, during the implementation of your project?
Oh, yes, we did, because it was really a very difficult time to start. So to get contact, what is very difficult in this huge consortium to tune the dates of visits, for instance. So in my opinion, to build 22 partner consortium is a little too big to coordinate. So there are dates, but there were many times shifted. So I think this is the main issue. Otherwise, I think all goes well concerning the research and results.
Thank you for this contribution. Sure.
Yes, hi everyone. If you allow me to give the point of view of RIA. So yes, of course, there may be issues when managing the staff exchange project as a coordinator. So maybe there are some tricks to consider. Well, to give an overall example of problems that you can encounter, of course, the more participants you have in the consortium, the more difficulties you may have because of amendments, because some participants are not very proactive, because they are leaving the consortium. You need a new participant to join the consortium. All those administrative issues have to be managed through the coordinator. So we could say, yes, there are issues, but there are also ways to overcome these difficulties, not only administrative, but financial. So first of all, yes, you should know I mean, the better you know the participants, the better interactions you have with the participants, the better it is. Don't hesitate as coordinator to remind the duties of the participants. So what is the general status in terms of legal obligations? Each participant is responsible for the declaration of secondment. Each participant is responsible for the submission of the financial form. What does that mean? It means this is a participant at their level who takes responsibility for the declarations, for claiming the cost, meaning they take responsibility for the legal consequences of it, and not the coordinator. And what does that mean? It means that each participant at each level is responsible to accumulate all documents demonstrating the eligibility of the fellow and the eligibility of the secondment. This is not the responsibility of the coordinator. I hope it's not me, I don't know, I'm sorry. So I was saying it's not the responsibility of the coordinator to accumulate all the documents of each participant demonstrating the eligibility of all secondees. So at least it divides the responsibility between the coordinator and the participants. Another aspect you may consider is putting in writing in the consortium agreement or partnership agreement how you intend to deal with all the problems that may appear. And a third point I would like to emphasize is that some institutions have so-called European office internally, where they have administrative staff responsible for managing European projects. And I can assure you that this is very helpful. They are very competent. They help you. They help the researcher managing the project. And honestly speaking, I don't believe that should be the responsibility of the researchers themselves, even the PIs, to manage the project and let them left by themselves managing the project. They already have so many duties, like, of course, research activities, sometimes teaching activities. And if you pile up all those duties with also the managing the laboratory, of course, then managing a contract is really a lot work for them. So this should be avoided. So please try to find an institution that has in-house European office able to support you for the as coordinator. And of course, the added value for that is that the coordinator can receive some money from this indirect cost, from the institutional costs that each secondment is triggering. The coordinator can get some money and can use this money for paying administrative officer managing the grant. And of course, the more grant you get from the European Commission, the more money you have, and of course, the more staff you can hire towards this activity. So you have a general framework to organize a meeting, to organize a consortium, and but definitely the key point is to have proactive participants, meaning that they should be aware right away from the kickoff meeting of all the rules. They should be aware that they should be proactive. The difficult part from the coordinator is to make sure that the secondment are being implemented. Just to remind you that, first of all, during your proposal, you are setting the number of person months you are requesting according to the objectives of science. So this is your choice, this is your decision, your proposal. We are not obliging you in doing anything like that. So it means that if you ask for so many person months, we expect that you will implement this person months, and not only from the coordinator side, but also from the participant side. And the participants should really be aware of that. they should implement the secondments. First of all, if you don't implement the secondments, of course you are losing the money. We will not pay you for that. You are losing the money for the project, but you also the other proposals that were submitted for the call would have been very happy. You know, those proposals who didn't pass the funding threshold, but were still eligible, above 70% of the marks. Those proposals on the rank list would have been very happy to be financed as well. So make sure you are using the person months you have been asking for and you have been getting by being selected positively by the evaluators. Of course, the evaluators confirm that what you are asking for in terms of number of person months are reasonable compared to the objectives and tasks of the real project. So make sure that everybody participates and is really proactive in implementing these person months. And as well, the funding would be lost for the science as well if you are not using these person months, because it will return to the general part, financial part of the commission, not necessarily dedicated to science. So as soon as you get this money put aside for your project, please make sure that by every means it is used fully, 100%. So yes, participants, to go back to the question, participants have to be proactive. They need to inform the coordinator if they have any problem, eventually also inform the project officers if they cannot implement the secondments. But solutions have to be found as early as possible. And that's why the first year of the project is very important, to make sure that everybody goes on track with the achievement of the person months. Because otherwise, if you wait the end of the first period, then you realize, oh well, somebody is not being active. We need to replace the participant. Then you need to find somebody else in this outside world. It takes time, it takes months, if not years. And of course, you reach the end of the project and the secondments have not been used. Okay, so that's what I recommend. Also, financially speaking, yes, there is a way to manage the project. And of course, they should be agreed in the partnership agreement. We suggest that the coordinator, so practically speaking, the coordinator receives the funding from the research executive agency for the entire project at different periods, the pre-financing, the intermediate payment and final payment. And of course, the share of this financing should be distributed to all participants according to the number of person months each participant is getting. And maybe a suggestion is to send this money. Of course, the rules, the obligation for the coordinator is not to jeopardize the success of the project, which means the coordinator has a responsibility to send the money to the participants with no delay. But in the meantime, you could agree on some procedure, meaning that, for example, you have X person months planned for the next 3 months, and then or 6 months, and then the coordinator is sending the money equivalent for the X months that are planned. So the coordinator still keeps the money, some money in house, and do not distribute everything at once. Because in case some participants are not doing anything, then they are not replying to you. They are not, they are not implementing person months. They have the money in pocket. The money cannot be used. The money is not returned to the coordinator, and we are starting to get into problems. So one way to reduce these difficulties is to give the money in several batches along the course of the project. So administrative aspects and financial aspects are important to manage, but yes, we are human beings. It all depends on the connections that people have together, how proactive they are, how much work they have, and that's how we have to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Thierry, for additional comments on this. And we will proceed further with a question that has been partially touched upon by Thierry. So do you have in your project administrative staff dedicated to administer this project? And what capacity does this person have? Like how much of the, well, it is written, for instance, 30% of the project. I will pass you the mic.
Thank you. Definitely, we need to have an administrative officer responsible for the project administrative aspects at each partner institution. So normally, in the proposal, we described the management of the grant and of the project if we are successful, and they follow actually the description there. And we implement it. So at the university level, we are supported by finance department, but for the management and administration, actually, those people who participated in the preparation of the proposal so far have been, and we expect that they will carry on doing that, and we think it's a good practice as well, are responsible for the management and administration of the project. And as for the share, of course, it varies because in terms of allocations of secondments, we have uneven distribution of secondments across different institutions. So, of course, some of the institutions which have fewer incoming and outgoing secondment mobilities would be less involved in the administrative aspect. Those who have more would be also expected to carry on more responsibilities in terms of organizing other events, because, for instance, now we organize the first kind of conference, research conference of the ODDEA project already at the end of May. And of course, it requires additional resources in terms of human resources. And we planned in the description of the action periodically such research activities. So I think it's very hard to say what would be the share of administrative or managerial load needed for this, but because it depends on also the role and the tasks of each partner. Of course, at the coordinating institution, the burden is highest, but nevertheless, also we tried in the implementation part of the proposal balance the tasks across the consortium. So this is what I think I was referring to when you prepare the implementation part of the proposal. Make sure to be realistic and not to overload one partner, for instance, the coordinator, because then it would backfire if your project is funded. Thank you.
So from our side, we don't really have anyone dedicated to the administrative part, and actually I was considering having someone from the administration to deal with this, but like really soon I realized that these people are just like twisting hands and they're asking for a lot of money to actually do things they considered as administration of the project, and in reality what they could do only is to transfer some documents within the university to be signed by different people, whereas they didn't know anything about the project, about the consortium, they didn't know personally the participants. So like in this respect, it was not beneficial to have someone dedicated like half-time or full-time to the administration. On the other hand, I think it can be very beneficial if someone is in this position, because in my position for the moment, I have to manage this project. I have to also manage other projects. I have to sometimes work in the lab and have stuff to deal with. So it's kind of overwhelming, but at the same time, it's very difficult to find administrative staff who can be actually quite useful for the administration. And to be honest, like the actual administration of the project in the EU portal is very straightforward and easy to implement. Like all milestones, deliverables and stuff, they're not so easy to do as long as they're there. Like, but having someone who just uploads a document without having any input into that is not really useful to have, I would say.
Maybe I would add one thing, because when you were talking, it came to my mind that really I think there is a lot of administration, and it's not only what is linked to like reporting or something, but once you have the mobility, you know, you need to make sure that those people who are coming to your institution, they have all the administrative arrangements in place, and then obviously who will do that? So you need to help them with accommodation, with visa, you need to help them with office space, with I don't know, cards which they need for transport, but also for university, etc. So here we found very useful to have one person who actually at my university takes care of it, and we asked other partners also to appoint somebody who is responsible just for organizing the mobilities, because then you know, we can tell our seconded researchers, okay, this is the person you need to contact, copy to the manager or coordinator at that institution, but they will not do it because they are senior researchers or senior managers, and they don't have time for that. So I think really it's important to have this administrative staff in place, and then to know how the procedures are working. And the one aspect which I found also useful was to prepare kind of introductory package for each institution, which was shared in our management system, and everybody can access that. So before even contacting that person who is in charge to organize the mobilities, they already have the overview how to travel there and what the infrastructure is and what options for accommodation there are. So they also do not need to ask the same questions all over the same person, each of them. So I think it's important to put this kind of effort into it at the beginning, and then it can run much more smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Skákalová, would you like to add anything? I think we have lost Ms. Skákalová right now. So I will proceed with the next question. Do partners transfer any part of the budget to you as coordinator?
Actually, it's not, I think, correctly asked, because at the beginning we got the grant, and then actually we transferred to the partners the budget. But yes, we prepared a consortium agreement, and it was signed by full partners. We prepared partnership agreement. It was signed with the inclusion of associated partners, and yes, we agreed on some percentage of the B part to be retained by the coordinating institution for the extra work we do, and also for some extra activities we are responsible for organizing on behalf of the consortium, as it was described in the description of action.
So the same for us. We actually keep 15% of this part to cover like activities related, for example, running a website administration and so etc. So.
Thank you.
15.
15.
Which is like normal. Like some people would go on 20, 25, depending on the expenses.
And another question for coordinators. Would you? Sure.
Thank you. Sorry again to interrupt, but yeah, of course, I fully confirm what Anetta just said and Pavel. But most importantly, category A of the funding cannot be allocated to the coordinators. This is totally forbidden. I want to emphasize this. It's very important. Category A cost should be spent to the benefit of the secondee. Right, so category A cannot be kept by the coordinator or any participant, but it should go to the secondee. So yes, category B cost can be part of the category B cost can be used by the coordinator, as you said. Yes, thank you.
And in that regard also, of course, this is clear. And we had the training as coordinators of new projects sometime in November. And there it was several times emphasized that everything, the budget in A must go to the seconded researcher. And it's quite clear and obvious.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience.
Thank you very much. Czech Legal and Financial NCP, you said the percentage of 15%. Thank you very much. It's a nice indication because we really face different percentages from 0 to 50%. And it's interesting to just have the overview what is in different cases. And this 15%, it's from both B categories or just indirect cost and management, or even research, training and networking? From both. So 15 from both. Okay, thank you.
Another question that we have is related to what are the hard lessons learned from proposal writing? Do you have any message? The most difficult part?
I would just say that I tried to point it out during my presentation. I think now I don't recall hard times writing the proposal, but I recall hard times during the preparation of the grant agreement, consortium agreement, and actually partnership agreement. And you should be ready for that once you applied, because we got the result like at the beginning of July, and then we were set for going on holidays. But actually I remember being on holidays, we had several, or at least several calls with my colleague who was in the US on the research stay at the same time, and with the project officer of REA to discuss and to start with the preparation of the agreement, of the grant agreement, and then of course communicating with the partners. And if you engage partners who actually are not familiar with the European Union programs like those in Southeast Asia, sometimes you need to train them intensively just to use the portal and such. Fortunately for us, this is not the first project with our Asian partners, so it was not that difficult, but still, even from the legal perspective, to draft the consortium agreement and the partnership agreement, because the consortium agreement should be signed before the start of the project. That was really quite a lot of work for us as coordinators before actually the project started. So that is something which I would like to point out, and people who succeed should be ready to invest into if they are coordinators.
So the most difficult part in the proposal preparation, so just the proposal preparation in reality, and then it just as any other project preparation. But since it involves small partners, it can be quite challenging if the responsibilities are shared. And for example, like in my case, this is the second time I attempt to put such a project proposal. And then the first time we had a partner in South Africa, and then we started writing, and basically I didn't hear from him for a week. Then he was like crucial for the consortium. Then I contacted him again, and again I didn't hear from him, and I got quite upset because basically it was compromising the whole application, and basically we had to drop the whole process. And a few months later I realized that this person has simply passed away. So basically a lesson learned: choose your collaborators wisely and expect the unexpected. So, but otherwise it's just writing a normal project application.
Thank you. You have actually answered 2 questions already. because the next one deals with inactivity of any partners, so you have touched upon that. And would you like to add anything? Do you have any partner who is not active?
Not in this project, but I also would like to emphasize the importance of the structure of the consortium. The best for a coordinator, I think, is to involve partners which are credible, with whom you have experience cooperating with, perhaps on a smaller scale, because in some other projects we face similar problem. And then, of course, it's a challenge, and it's not something we want in the first place.
Thank you. What has been the origin of your consortium? If those partners were long-term collaborators or new partners, brand new ones?
So I partially already said those partners from Southeast Asia, we have worked with them before, and I personally worked with them before. As for the European partners, we have some new partners and some partners with whom we worked before. I think to get new partners in terms of European partners is not such a challenge, because they are used to European projects, they are used to the framework used. But still, commitment can be a challenge, because, you know, some times we over-apply because we know that the success rates are not great. And then if we succeed in more proposals, we can be running out of time. And then it is the challenge, and it's a problem how this issue could be tackled. Or should be tackled.
So in my case, the core of the consortium is basically my immediate scientific circle. So these are former colleagues and friends. So for example, one of the labs is where I did my PhD studies, then another lab is where I did my postdoctoral studies. And then I have some people from Bulgaria with whom we've been working for some time. And then the new partners actually are the ones in third countries like Argentina and South Africa, for whom we had to reach out and identify new interested partners. And honestly, like, we've been lucky with one of them in Argentina, and then not so lucky maybe still to say with South Africa, but like, it's a gamble if you start working with new people and new organizations. So, but in general, the best is to have someone you can really trust, know what to expect, and know how to engage professionally with. So,
thank you. Actually, due to the time, and because we will have another meeting that probably the majority of you are already waiting for, I will just raise one last question, and we will close the session. So I will choose maybe this one just briefly. What resources are you going to use to cover the seconded staff salaries? Because it was a major issue during the first session we had. So will you use other running projects or institutional money, or how do you cover the salaries?
Yeah, actually, this question in the plenary was quite surprising for me, because we didn't come across such a problem. Actually, seconded researchers are our full-time staff or full-time doctoral students. And full-time staff, they get salary, so they go on the second-man mobility as full-time employees of our institution. And actually, they get full salary as if they were in the workplace at their home university. And as for doctoral students, these are full-time doctoral students. So according to the constitution or the legislation in Slovakia, full-time doctoral students, they are obliged to get the scholarship, so they carry on getting the scholarship during the second-man mobility. So to us, this is not a problem, and I think the situation is the same at other partners institutions. So we don't recruit anybody just for the sake of second-man mobility. We make sure that these second-man mobilities build capacities and develop a research network of our staff and doctoral students.
So like in an ideal case, of course, everyone would have like full staff members who would go away for some time, go back, bring new expertise, establish new connections. And we try to actually implement the project in this way, but in reality it's not so easy because some of the partners have small groups. They don't want to dedicate people for extended period of times away. So they try to find ways to kind of either recruit only for the duration or thinking about it, which I would not fully appreciate. But in our case, for example, we would predominantly use PhD students who are like relatively long-term in the lab, funded by other sources. For example, they have like stipend from the government and additional funding from other projects. So this is not an issue, but like I can see the problem that some people would actually think like that this person should be specifically sent for this duration and then like not even consider like this long-term impact of the secondment and etc. So, but in reality, in our case, it's individual depending on the person, but in general, these are money from institutions, other projects, etc.
Thank you. We can continue discussing that, and we probably will during the beneficiaries meeting. So with this, I'd like to thank you all. Thanks to the speakers for coming to Olomouc. Thank you for being so active today. And I'd like to invite you once again to the Bratislava training, where we will work with project proposals. So it will not be just information session, but we will try to make it as interactive as possible. And thank you. I'm looking forward to meeting you during our next info days and trainings. Have a nice evening.